You can see how in these 4 seasons, you have all the ingredients for creation. There is a time, in winter time where nature hibernates and where everything comes inward and you feel like nothing is happening, but a lot is happening. That's actually where, everything starts. So that is where everything starts, with rest.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Value Whispering podcast. I'm your host, Melitta Campbell, business coach, value whisperer, and advocate for introverted female experts who want to build a business that feels natural, authentic, and impactful. On this podcast, we often talk about the importance of balancing and managing your energy and creating success by staying connected to your true value. It's a key part of the value whispering process. And today's conversation beautifully expands on that theme as we explore what it means to run a business like a woman, in a way that aligns with our natural cycles, intuition, and strengths. I'm joined today by Christina Pop, creator of the Thrive Formula, who helps women stop running their business like a man and instead build success on their own terms. You're going to discover how to integrate feminine and masculine energies, respect your natural rhythms, and create a business that feels supportive and not draining. Let's dive in. Hi, Christina. It's great to have you with us on the podcast today.
Hi, Melitta. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so glad to be here with you today.
Yeah, me too. And I love the title of the work that you do and your podcast. It's like, stop running your business like a man. And that really resonated with me. When I worked in corporate, I ran a women's network, and it was really interesting to see how very often the only people that were opposed to that were the women, not the men. And it was those women who had fought really hard and become very masculine in their approach to business. And so I think that whole idea was alien to them. It's like, why would we want to be like a woman? And so it was very interesting, complex, but I can totally see why a lot of women have felt that they have to adapt themselves to fit into a world that wasn't designed for them. But then looking at how can we do things differently is really interesting as well. So I'm really curious to get your insights into that. And I know you've got some really interesting thoughts as well around how we can not only run a business like a woman, but match your energy and your work to our natural cycle as well. So I'm really looking forward to diving into all of that. But before we do, I would love it if you could share a little bit about your story and how you came to be doing what you do today.
Yes, so I'm Christina Pop. Pop is my real name. By the way, I get asked all the time, is Pop your real name? It's my real name. It's a Romanian name. So I was born in Romania. I lived in 7 countries in total. Now I'm living in Switzerland, where we met. And I help women stop running their business like a man. And we will talk about that. How I came to what I do today. I started my career in the corporate world and worked in Paris in a startup and then in a French bank. And after, a couple of years, I realized that what I want to do is to have my own business. So in my 30s, I started my own business as a coach. And coaching in 2012, when I had my first coaching training, that was not a thing. I would go to a networking event or a party and people would be like, so what are you doing? And I would say, I'm a coach. And they would be like, so what sport are you coaching? That was, how well known coaching was at that time. And for me, that didn't derail my way, that was not the thing. And people would even question if that is a real job and and a real business. That was for me the sign that this is what we need and that we need coaching. I have discovered also coaching through my own journey. In my own journey, I worked with a coach, which was at that time, like I said, not very common. So I knew the power of coaching, and for me that was only a sign that I need to go further. And I'm very stubborn. Because I follow my intuition. And when my intuition says that is the way we go, I follow it. And that's what I did with coaching. And so I created my first business. And then when we moved to Switzerland, I created a business in Switzerland in 2022.
Was the focus of your coaching always how women can run a career or a business like a woman, or did that evolve along with the coaching?
Yeah, it has evolved in these 13 years. In the beginning, I worked with expat spouses, and that was in Austria, in Vienna, when I opened my first coaching business. It's interesting because in the beginning, that was 2012. That wasn't at that time we didn't even talk about niching down and things like that, in coaching. So it was just me, talking about what I was doing, and what I saw is that women started to come with me. I was an expat in Vienna, and so I was in that expat world, and women that I met in different events, and I was also volunteering a lot in different women associations. They started to come to me, and interestingly, they're only women. So from the beginning, I only worked with women, and I realized that women have a different way of approaching their life and their career. In coaching schools at that time, we were taught that this is, therapists work on private life, coaches work on professional life, and you don't go into the private, life with clients. But what I realized very fast is that, we are not robots. We don't have these compartments. This is my private life. This is my professional life. And especially for women, where decisions impacted, if you want a child, that has an impact on choices you make in your business, in your career. If you are unhappy in your job, that has an impact on your relationship. So things were not as as separated as I was taught in the coaching schools. And I realized that for women there was a different dynamic, different priorities, different ways. So that's when I started to develop this holistic approach of integrating all parts of ourselves and all parts of our lives. And then through the years, my coaching evolved and reiterated, and then I created my own method, the Thrive Formula. And with time, I started to see how, these energies that we all have, the masculine energy, the feminine energy, the yang and the yin, when we over-index and overuse the masculine energy, it has an impact on our well-being, on our health, on how we show up in our lives. And that's when I started to really focus on stop running your business like a man, stop running your career like a man, and all the work I'm doing today.
Yeah, I love that evolution. And I saw it when I ran that women's network as well, because we had regular events where we'd have a panel and we'd discuss a challenge that people were going through. And it was the first time that everyone could say, yeah, and most of the challenges I have in my career have got nothing to do with my career. It's how I manage everything else outside of that. And we've had some wonderful discussions, and we opened the events up to men as well. And a lot of the managers came. And so we had a really frank discussion about, well, what, starting to give people permission to, if this is a struggle, you can organize yourself. And, no one's ever said you can't do this, but we've never expressly said you can operate this way, because we've never had these conversations before. It was really wonderful. But yeah, as I said, if we go too far down one way, as you were saying, you can really throw yourself off balance, trying to be too much of someone you're not, which is, of course, the basis of a lot of my work. And it started from those discussions, trying to be a way that just doesn't suit you, to fit into other people's plans. It just doesn't work. And I think it doesn't have to work, but we haven't ever had the opportunity or the permission to challenge things. But running our own business, we have full permission to do things exactly as we want, but we still don't always take that. I have one client and she was really struggling to get into the flow with her work, but she was trying to work 9 to 5 because that's what people did. Whereas actually, when we looked at, well, when do you feel most creative? When do you feel most inspired? When do you feel ready to do the work she was trying to do? It was like 2 till 7. So she just shifted her day and then things started to come together for her. But yeah, we just get so ingrained in these frameworks. So if we have like what we think is the way we should be doing business or our career or life, how do we start to identify what is helpful, what needs to be done a certain way, and where we have a bit of control and can change things?
Yeah, and just one thing, because I love how you said that you also included not only the women, but also the men. And I think that all genders need, we all need to have this discussion because it's not a women versus men thing. All genders, all of us have this masculine and feminine because it's not about, with feminine, by the way, it's not about, wearing lipstick and high heels. And that's the stereotype that our patriarchal society created around feminine. But feminine energy and masculine energy, I really want to refer to them as, in the traditional Chinese medicine, the yin and the yang, which are qualities of energy. The feminine is the intuition, the being, the cyclic living, the rhythms, the connection with our bodies, with our emotions. And the masculine is the doing, the getting things done. It's an active kind of energy, is the structure, the logic, the analytical thinking, the linear thinking. And we need both, right? And that is for all genders. Now, to come back to your question, I think that's how we see if it's not aligned is when we start seeing that things don't feel delightful anymore in our lives. And I'm also getting back to what you share about your client. We think we should do things in a different way because that's how we have seen it in the corporate world or in school or, around us because yes, our structures today have not been created by women. Women have been taken out of the professional life, of the active world. In Europe between the 13th and the 15th century, there was all this chase against women, and women have been taken out of the public life. And when they entered back in the 18th century, the workplaces, they have been designed by men for men. So when we try to fit into that with our cyclic energy, that creates a lot of tension, a lot of unhappiness, a lot of disconnection. And we can see it in our bodies, our health, our disconnection, a sense of general dissatisfaction in our life. Like we have checked the boxes, but still doesn't feel fulfilling. Huge, endless to-do lists, overwhelmed, like that are usually the sign, or overwhelmed, but also at the same time, procrastination can also be a sign that you are, running your business in your career like a man. And for many women, it's also starting to, not so secretly, actually, hating their business. I say not so secretly because actually, we think it's a secret, but people around us see is that, there is not that delight. We wanted to start a business for the flexibility, for the freedom, for the joy, for helping other people. And then down the road, that's not how we feel. And that's how we can see if we are running our businesses like a man, which, the way I explain it is from an unbalanced energy.
Yeah. So what would it look like and feel like, I guess is probably the bigger question, if we were to run our businesses like a woman? What's the difference? Because I think that's perhaps the thing that's unseen. And we were talking before we came on that if you go to business podcasts, 90% are by men, for men, interviewing men. So we don't necessarily see the difference. And part of the reason why I started this podcast and it began as the Driven Female Entrepreneur was to highlight what it takes for women to succeed in business. And it was very interesting that everybody always said the same thing, which is why I changed the focus a little bit after a while. But it was all to do with more leaning into your emotions, listening to your body, your intuition, because that's something that we have that's a very strong guide, but you can't put your finger on anything. It's just a feeling. So we've learned to distrust that because men do have this, but not in the same way. So is that what it's all about? Or yeah, Tell us everything.
I love your question. And there are different aspects to it. For me, what is important is to have all parts integrated, all energies integrated. So to run your business like a woman ultimately comes down to integrated both energies. It's not only about the feminine for me, it is about integrating a healthy dose of masculine and a healthy dose of feminine. So having both. And that means, yes, having structures, having strategies. The masculine energy is holding, it's holding the space, is the container. So that is important for me in a feminine way business. That is also important. And at the same time, and that's the piece that it's under evaluated in our society, is the connection with our body, with our emotions, with intuition, is the listening to our rhythms inside ourselves, outside ourselves. Our lives as women have cycles, have different phases. That is the story of any woman, that we move through all these phases, we connect with all these archetypes. Also, we have a menstrual cycle, and that is a hormonal cycle. And when we don't have that, there are other cycles, because everything is cyclic in nature. And also from what we know from our universe, galaxies expand, galaxies contract. So there is this cyclic energy everywhere. And so listening to that in our bodies, outside our bodies, in our businesses, very often the advice that is given is towards a very linear growth in business. Whereas, businesses have seasons as well. There are seasons in our businesses, in everything. So that is a big part as well, respecting the cyclic energy, the seasons, and also having business and marketing strategies that feel good. Because a lot of you are mentioning, advice and podcasts, and what is taught still in business today, it is from the masculine perspective. If you look at the statistics, books, many business books are written still by men, the majority. So that doesn't mean that we cannot take on that advice, but it means bringing more nuance and also not feeling pressure to use business advice and to use strategies that don't feel good to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see why the standard advice is the masculine way, and looking at seasons and the cycles, it makes perfect sense. And in our seasons of life as well, the way I run my business 17 years ago when my kids were babies is very different to how I can run it now. And it's different to how I'll run it 5 years from now when the kids have maybe hopefully left home and I have more space and energy. So it's interesting. And I think women have more emphasis on these different stages than men do, perhaps. But I always feel that with that also comes opportunity that we don't always lean into enough. But you mentioned about this cyclical energy. Can you talk a little bit more about what that is and how we can use it?
Yes. So, like I said, everything is cyclic and energy is cyclic. If we lived in, both of us live in Switzerland, but that is true also. I have clients who are under the tropics, and under the tropics too, you still have like a rainy season and a dry season, and we here have 4 seasons in Europe. So we can see how things go, and how with the 4 seasons, that's something, it's really obvious, because you can see how in these 4 seasons you have all the ingredients for creation. There is a time, in winter time, where nature hibernates and where everything comes inward, and you feel like nothing is happening, but a lot is happening. That's actually where everything starts. So that is where everything starts, with rest and with coming inwards and with making space for reflection. And then we have springtime, and that's a time for new beginnings. Everything is emerging. And then we have summertime, where fruits are ripe, and it's also a season that it's very outwards energy, and everything is booming. And then we have fall, and that is when nature comes again. It's separated from everything that is not needed anymore. And that are actually ingredients. These 4 ingredients are necessary in any project, in anything we do. we need these 4 steps. And that's how I created the Feminine Creative Cycle framework, is from this observation that in a cycle of creation, we move through these phases. And in the Feminine Creative Cycle framework, I have rest, emerge, expand, and adjust, these 4 phases. And you can apply that to anything. The moon has these 4 phases. Our menstrual cycle has these 4 phases. Seasons, in the traditional Chinese medicine, there are the 4 elements also connected. There is a 5th one that has been in the ancient times, positioned in the center, the earth element, but you have the 4 elements around and they create one another. So it is from the observation that everything works like that. And when we observe that, when we start anticipating and having, these times for our projects, then what I have seen with my clients in my own life is that you don't push anymore against your own energy. You do the right thing at the right time. And that creates a lot of flow and ease. And when you do have a hormonal cycle, you can adjust that around your hormonal cycle, because our cognitive function are influenced by our hormones, and that makes things so much easier.
Yeah, and I guess it explains a lot as well why, in our business, there are moments where we need to just reflect, create, as you say, adjust. It's not all go, go, go the whole time. And yet when we have these periods, we're like, oh, hold on a minute, I'm not doing enough, I'm not getting the results. And then you can push yourself, as you've seen, to a point where you're going to start burning out, you're going to feel very inauthentic, and you're not giving yourself the space to create something really magical. So I love that cycle. And you have a checklist that people can download if they're interested to learn more about that. I know I'm going to be downloading it because it makes perfect sense, but it isn't something that I personally have gone into in much depth to really see, well, how can I change things around a little bit? But now you're talking about it, I'm like, maybe that's worth a try.
The reason so many women are in burnout is that they are not respecting their hormonal cycle and their cyclic energy. And I completely, understand what you have said. And that was for me also in the beginning, and also with clients, that we push ourselves when we are in this rest phase. We understand that we need them, but also at the same time, they comes with guilt and, questioning. And my approach is to actually plan them and really allow yourself that space in advance. And rest, it's not something that you earn, but it's the very first phase you start with. So just to give you an example, when I created my program Emerge, it's a group program. So I decided I'm going to launch this program, and I started with resting. And I remember my brain was like, what are we doing here? We are wasting our time. But during that phase, I learned how to manage my emotions, how to navigate my emotions and all the brain chatter. I was able to go into that phase. And then from there, so much came out. I came out of this phase with the name for the program, all the ideas. And then when I moved into my Emerge, into the new beginnings, the spring phase, everything was already clear. I had, the framework for everything, and then it was so much faster and so much easier to create the content. And then I have recorded it in my expand phase, and then I have adjusted, and I went in 3 cycles through that, and my program was created like that in a very short time. And that is the magic of aligning with cycles. You can create with so much less effort and without the suffering that comes with pushing through these phases.
Yeah, I love what you said there, that rest isn't something that you earn. And it's the start point. And I guess it can feel like a really scary start point because it goes against everything that we've ever been taught about anything. Rest comes at the end of the day, and you have to work before.
And end of the week, right?
Yeah. But if you look at it on a daily cycle, you have your rest and then you emerge from your bed, and it does make sense, but we kind of think about it backwards. So yeah, I love that. And I see with my clients, and in a moment where they're feeling a little bit stressed, under pressure, that's the point where I do say, it's going to sound counterintuitive, but take some time out. even if it's just to go and have a nap in a bath or something, or walk outside, take that break, because that's definitely what you need. And it's so true. It's in those rest moments where we have our best ideas and the chance to kind of run those through and try out different scenarios before you start to go forward. So, yeah, I really love that. The other thing, what I do in my business, which I've learned, is instead of planning every week, these are the things I'm going to do, I'll have my standard days and week and things, but then I'll also, like, one week we'll have this theme, the next week we'll, for example, reaching out for speaking opportunities, and then the next week could be something else. The following week could be the follow up. The week after, it'll be just networking, meeting interesting people. So, taking that into consideration, when I download your checklist, it'll be interesting to see if what I've discovered works best for me is aligned to the cycle. And if it isn't, I'll see if I can play around and adjust that. So,
You can
yeah, I really
adjust
love
that.
that.
Yeah, I really encourage everyone to see this as a journey because at each cycle, that is amazing, and especially if we are following the hormonal cycle, that at each cycle we are given the opportunity to start new. That's how amazing women's bodies are, is that it is like a new life, a new beginning at each cycle. So that's also, I think it takes out this pressure of the linear planning and you're like, I have to do it. It's a new opportunity. It's a new cycle. It's a new chapter that can be written every 28-ish days if you have a hormonal cycle. And if you don't have one, that's why I have created the Feminine Creative Cycle, because you can work with other cycles. Nature has plenty, and you can still have that cyclic refresh, renew, because without that I think and that's the also the piece that comes from the traditional Chinese medicine. When we don't have that, we kind of waste our life force. It's draining our life force when we don't use that cycle of renewal.
Yeah. Yeah. So much food for thought. So you mentioned that you have a Thrive framework. What does it mean for you to thrive through business?
I love that question. Thriving through business for me is having a business that holds us instead of consuming us. Because we have all started our businesses with the idea that, that it's going to be nourishing. Our businesses will nourish us. And unfortunately, a couple of months or years down the road, what we see very often when we don't implement all of that is that like I said, we start to feel drained and consumed by our business and feel like that's just another thing we have to do and kind of start to resent sometimes pieces of our businesses or whole business. And for me, thriving is creating a business that holds us. Really like I have this image of the nest, like it's holding us, it's nurturing us, and we can then thrive not only in our business but in all areas of our lives.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. Christina, you've covered so much. We've really I say my mind is whirling here. So I was just curious, is there anything you feel that we haven't touched on that would be great for the audience to know? Maybe start with this or give permission to take that rest first and start thinking it a bit differently, going in cycles, or how do you switch from linear to cyclical approach in your business? It's quite a big shift. Yeah, lots of questions there.
I love all of that. I think you really highlighted so well. It is about, starting with rest. It is about starting with the feminine creative cycle, and we'll put the daily checklist in the show notes so that people can download it. And it is really the first step, because what I have seen with clients is that because it's so different than everything else we have been taught, it takes some time to integrate it. And I have programs, it's sometimes I work with clients for 6 months, 1 year to get that into this flow. But it is a great place to download the checklist and start documenting. And that's what I want to encourage everyone, is to start paying attention, because when you will start paying attention, you'll be like, that makes totally sense. It's, sometimes clients tell me, how come I haven't seen that before? It is wisdom that we have. It's just that we have forgotten, because, what I said, women have been chased and tortured to forget this wisdom because it was so powerful. That's was the reason. It was such powerful wisdom to understand the cycles of everything. And that's to start paying attention to how your inner rhythms change, how, things come and go in your body and in your mind and with your emotions. And for me also, nature is a great source of inspiration. So look around and see how everything in nature has this wisdom already embedded, and we are nature too. So that will make things so much easier.
Yeah. And is there anything that you've seen trips people up that they're not expecting, that might, they have all the best intentions, they're going to start to look at the cycle, be a bit more attentive to what's happening, what's working, what isn't, but is there a point where they need to be aware, watch out for this, this is the thing that will stop you from following this path through?
Yeah, there will be many. Because, like we said, everything around us is designed in a linear way, and the patriarchal structures are, not at all about cyclic energy. So there will be, it starts with our own brain that, will bring doubts and, beliefs like, this is not going to work for my company, or this is not going to work at my workplace, or it's not going to work for my business. That might work for, someone else, but not for me. So yes, there will be all these thoughts that our brain will offer. And that's why I have created my program, so that first of all, we need to see that we are not alone, that other women are on this path, and that we can start a movement. That's my whole intention around, the work I do, is to start and now continue, because I have been doing that for years, this movement of doing business differently, and to see that other women are part of this business, to see that it makes sense and that it is all of us will benefit, from when we are aligned, when we feel in line with our biology, with our bodies, with our emotions, our intuition. Everyone will benefit from that. Our husbands, our brothers, our daughters, our sons. It is for the benefit of everyone to integrate the feminine and the masculine.
Yeah, I truly believe that. Thank you so much. Brilliant point to end on. So as you say, you've got the Feminine Creative Cycle Daily Checklist. So we'll put the link to that in the show notes. But if anyone wants to connect with you, where's the best place for them to find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with your audience, and also on Instagram. But I'm on both platforms. I have a preference for LinkedIn, to be honest. And we will put the link in the show notes, right?
Yeah, yes, of course. Fantastic. And you have a podcast as well.
Yes, Stop Running Your Business Like a Man, available on all podcast platforms, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the others. Just Google or put in your favorite platform, Stop Running Your Business Like a Man, and it will show up.
Fantastic. Christina, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed this discussion.
Thank you so much, Melitta. I am so grateful to, having be here. I have got so much value from your podcast, and I always felt this groundness and feeling of coming home, whenever I listen to your podcast, and to be here with you today has been a great honor. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I hope you have enjoyed this conversation with Christina as much as I have. There is so much power in remembering that success doesn't have to come from pushing harder. It can come from aligning more with your natural rhythms, integrating both feminine and masculine energies, and giving yourself permission to do business your way. And on that point, I would love to invite you to download your free copy of the Introvert's Business Growth Playbook, which will help you find your way of growing your business in line with your introverted strengths and respectful to your energy. You'll find that at melittacampbell.com/playbook. And again, I'll put the links to that and Christina's Creative Cycle Daily Checklist in the show notes for you, which you will find on the podcast page at melittacampbell.com/podcast. And if today's discussion has resonated with you, I'd love it if you could share this episode with a friend who might also need to hear this message. I'm Melitta Campbell, your business coach and value whisperer, and I'll be back next Wednesday with a new episode. Until then, keep whispering your value into the world in your own quietly powerful way.